it has. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Vid. So, Martin, thank you for joining this study today. And let's get started. What is your current role or your job title? Could you please share with us?
I am currently mostly head of research at Moodle and also a board director at Open Education Global and founder and director of Open EdTech uh, and lots of other little things, but that's it. And I'm the founder of Moodle, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we aware of that. We have already have a such about you and your profile. So, you share that you have been working with different like open area in education, technology, and that quite different things in a lot of things that with the title open, and so. We're curious on, since AI can mean different things to different people. So what do you call AI?
Well, so AI in its proper term includes all the research of artificial intelligence or creating intelligence in machines and all those aspects. And that's been an ongoing field for over 50, 60 years. Lots of techniques. Most people now are using AI to refer to generative AI or language models that have been worked on for the last 10 odd years, but is particularly from the last 3-4 years when we started to see results that were as amazing as we are seeing. And so yeah, most people now when we're talking about AI, we're talking about language model based generative AI.
Mm-hmm. I see. So then you mentioned that you're also on the board of, director of Open OE Global. So, we kind of interested in understanding your perspective on open education. So, what is open education actually to you?
Well, it's mostly about access, I think, mostly to make sure, well, to try and, let's say, work towards the ideal of education being freely available, that the content that we use and the resources that we use are free also. And not only free to use, but free to remix and redistribute. So Creative Commons license stuff, basically. And but it goes beyond that. It's the idea. It goes back to that access, I think, and ideally that in if we were able to give everybody the ability to do any level of education they want for no cost, that it would be a better thing for the world overall. So it's about opening up education to make it a right rather than a privilege or a service that you have to pay for. Mm.
I see. So building on what you have shared about AI and also open education, so like how did you define the openness in the context of artificial intelligence?
Mm. So there are many shades to that word in the context of AI. One is you should have access to AI. That is probably the only definition that OpenAI conform to, OpenAI, the company that is, as opposed to the concept. Uh, I think though, because the intelligence and the is so opaque generally, you're talking to if you're talking through a chatbot interface to an AI, then you are purely talking to it in that discussion form. You don't really know its breadth of knowledge and the provenance of its knowledge, the sources, or how it's working or what it's doing. It's, generally when you use a commercial AI, it's a black box. You're talking to a black box. And so the second meaning of OpenAI for me is the understanding of what it is you're interacting with, and to really be able to see and understand how it was made, what it was made from, And as well as in there probably would be to include how it chooses what to say. So the algorithms, the transparency of decision making that's going on behind the scenes. An AI can easily be fine-tuned or system prompted to act in a very particular way, so like never talk about this or always talk about that, or and so on. So there's a lot of bias and things like that can be added on. So this is on top of even the model itself and how the model operates. This is how it's implemented and staged for you as well. So all of those things I believe should be transparent, particularly in education. If you're talking about educating people, which is nothing less than creating the culture of the future, then I think we need to understand how we're doing that and what we're doing and what we want to see, so that we can have discussions about it, and we can be operating with a lot more information about these systems, which are going to become embedded in everything. And whole generations learning through them, and it seems likely to me that most educational content, even if you aren't getting it from an AI directly, someone else did, and it will be data that you rely on that has come from an AI somewhere. And if we don't have the transparency in these systems, this full openness of the whole system, then we have a big problem. So that's I would say, the second meaning of OpenAI. Well, it corresponds with the definition of open source AI that was recently decided upon, and I'm sure you're aware of. And I was actually involved in some of the discussions with opensource.org about that. And the main thing that we added in there was the idea that the data is available, that you can see where it comes from. But there's more to it than that, all those other things I just explained about the way it's operated and the way it comes to you is also should be open as well.
I see. So thanks, Martin. So I can see that there's some difference between, OpenAI and open source AI. Am I right? What do you think about that?
When you said OpenAI, are you talking about the company or the concept?
The concept.
The concept, yeah. Yes, there is. Yeah, open source AI is quite strict because you have to be you're supplying a lot of very particular information to be able to then stamp that thing as being open source AI. Whereas OpenAI it's that and more, and a lot about how is it being prompted, how's it being operated, how's it, all those layers in between, and I guess it's those things will always be changing and adding. So it's the mindset that you will be open about these things in future. It comes down to that mindset, I suppose. A commercial company that is very focused on money or power is necessarily going to hold back on information because it's going to help their competitors, or they're worried about people finding out where they got this training data from and they don't want to get sued, so they're afraid, or for whatever reason, there's a mindset of protection and hiding and obscuring, whereas the mindset of someone who's truly working on open AI is like, have everything, take it all, here it is, it's all available, whatever you need to know I will tell you. Like, it's that mindset. And that's the difference. And I really much prefer working with people who have that mindset about open AI, of course, but all kinds of open edtech. That's why I founded Open Edtech, because that's the same thing, just on other types of software. And I think it's that mindset that will get us in the best direction for the future.
Yeah. So, do how do you perceive the role of OpenAI in enhancing education? Do you think it has some, potential in education?
Well, it's essential because if you're talking to or relying on an AI system to give you information, guide you in a process, help you make decisions in any form, in any layer, in any way. And if that AI has some agenda or a bias that's been built in either intentionally or unintentionally, it can lead to a dangerous situation. So you could imagine that we all become dependent on one or two massive super intelligences in the future. And OpenAI is not far from that. It's most of the AI startups are actually wrappers around the OpenAI company, and they're using the same model in the back end. So this thing has a lot of influence over things. And in education, our job is to help people grow as, let's say, as clearly and well as possible. And if you're growing people, students of all ages, and the water and the fertilizer that's going on them is biased, then you have a lot of issues possibly. You don't have people maybe becoming critical thinkers. You have people who grow up in a world where they just accept things for how they are. People who have a lot of money and power might have an agenda of making people become more, let's say, subservient in whatever way, even if it's they become the landlords of everything. So we own everything and you're going to rent everything and you're working for us essentially, right? Because, and there's plenty of examples of systems that try and do that. Then is that the world we want? Is that the culture we want? Is that the education we want? So that's where it comes back down to education. To have good education, I believe you need a transparent system and a good understanding of where everything is coming from and who controls it.
I see. So are there any challenges that we could think of if we want to really, develop or implement OpenAI in the future?
So a lot of the people who could be working on this are at universities, and a lot of people at universities are constrained from doing anything significant because they have no money or no time to do so. And some of this AI development is expensive. It costs millions of whatever currency you want to name to develop AIs from scratch. It costs less to fine tune and do a lot of testing on things, and that's definitely more popular and a good approach. But it would obviously help if it was all transparent in the first place, and that requires going right back to the beginning. And there are some efforts to create AIs that are based on a known, clear, transparent data sets that you can go and look at anytime you want. And I think that's great. But when I talk to people in universities, they say, well, we don't really have the resources to do that stuff ourselves. So that's where we need to coordinate probably more and have more group projects or government projects and so on. But mostly people are very most people are not feeling it like I'm feeling it. I feel they're like just struggling with the idea of AI in general, and they're quite happy to use commercial models uncritically, and they don't really think about it. These things. So it is a bit of a battle. That's probably the challenge is getting people to feel that way, that that there is a better way, that AI is not owned by large companies. It's actually a general technology we can implement, just like documents or networking or text formats. It's really it's just a general technology.
But I guess that is the kind of like the mindset, closed model have a better value than open ones. I think that kind of the mindset that is also applicable in open education, OERs, and the other thing as well. The thing that, because it's free, so it's not, meaningful or it's not valuable. So it's all about the mindset of people, you're right. And so do you see that there is any opportunities for the development of open model or open AI in the future? like, for example, like, is there any, policy particular, like the AI Act or something that could help to, provide the opportunities for the development of open AI?
Totally. Yeah. Any government could pass rules saying, hey, we need to have open source AI. The first stop was defining what open source AI was, and that only just happened now. So it took us up until now to define that. And there was a lot of arguments about it too. A lot of pushback on the data angle. There's a lot of reaction from people. People get very sensitive about data. And I'm talking about documents and things you would use in training. Some people, because of the way things have been, they get very precious about their copyright on things. I wrote this, it's mine. I can determine who gets to copy it. And so the copyright rules that we have are there supposedly to protect creators and now allow them to make money off their stuff. But if you really look at it, there aren't any academics who are making money much off their stuff.
That's right.
Mostly there are large companies like Disney's. Disney's famous for pushing the copyright limits for Mickey Mouse and controlling that in the US, which influenced the other copyright laws around the place. And yes, and publishers are the ones who benefit generally, not the creators. So personally, I think copyright is an old-fashioned concept, and we should just kill it. Like, I am not a fan of copyright anymore, and for the reason that I don't know anyone who has written anything completely locked in a white room without any contact with the rest of the world. Nobody does that. All stuff that is created is either a summarization of some other stuff or a reaction to some other stuff, whether it be the environment or people, other people. So we're all in it together. We're all connected. We're all reacting and working from each other. And so the academic concept, which maybe used to be more common than it is, of hey, open sharing and knowledge, and we all work together. We're all working together on the problems of the world, is the way to go. That's what we should be doing, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion. But there is the counter thing is people who want to make money, too much money, tend to think closed, and because with the particularly American mindset, if you have a proprietary thing and people want it because it's great, you can charge for it, and especially people will invest in it. So you can attract more money for investment. You can make the system slicker. You can work on leverage and get control and keep competitors out and seek to have a monopoly. And you just make these big cash machines, right? And investors love cash machines. It's just the nature of people with a lot of money. They're looking to invest it somewhere and make it into more money. So that's just the dynamics of the world. So there's these two opposing forces, and we have to fight for open. Everyone who's into open needs to fight for it. So the way we do it, I say, is through global policy and like we're stuck with democracy, for better or worse. We need to vote for people who understand that we're all in it together. Things like technologies should be open. And Moodle's an example of where over the years, Moodle has spent about $120 million developing their software. It is completely free. It is completely open. You can download it and you don't have to tell us, and you can do what you want with it, and you can give it to whoever you want. It's completely open. And yes, it costs a lot of money to produce. So we had to find other models apart from selling it and closing it to pay people to do work. And they're there. There's lots of models. There's lots of ways. There are other ways. So it's not like this is a hypothetical thing. This is literally what I've done with my corner of the world, and anybody could do. Yeah.
I see. So
I'd like to jump in with a couple of questions, if that's okay. Just to clarify, as we're talking about openness, is it a property of an AI system, that whether the system is open or not? Or is it something about the author's mindset or the way the system is being shared? Or is it something else?
It's more about the implementation, the neural network technology that makes LLMs work. Those concepts are open. Like, so everything you're using, say ChatGPT, all the things that make that work, you can find in research papers written by lots of people from around the world. They've just taken that, and it's the implementation of it that isn't very open. And there's a lot of obfuscated and hidden details, such as where is the data from, and what are the algorithms, and what are the prompts, and there's paywalls and so on. They're providing a service, and it's that way of operating. But I wouldn't call it. I don't like it, and a lot of people don't like it. Call it open AI because it doesn't do all the. It doesn't. It's not as open as it should be, and it really should be fully open. If you're going to have a name like Open AI, confuse everybody. So yes, it's about the implementation. The actual design of the system internally is. I don't think there's such a thing as an open. If you just look at the basic LLM, better this, you have an open, something that I would regard as open with all the things I've talked about, and something that is not open. And if you actually used it for a task, you might get exactly the same results. So that there's nothing fundamental to the way it operates. It's more about the way it's been implemented and the availability and the transparency. That's all. Yeah.
Aha. And then the other part, as we talk about access, suppose we have a company that shares all the implementation details of an AI system they're developing in a technical report. And is that enough then for the system to qualify as open? Or are you also looking that people can actually understand that report, and by whom? Does it depend on who's reading, or does it just depend on who's sharing?
Some of the stuff is necessarily extremely technical, and you will have to use technical language and technical concepts. The definition of open source AI has language such as that a reasonably skilled person can replicate the system from the instructions. So, you need knowledge to do things. Fortunately, now we have AI to help us with the knowledge. So if the language is too complex, you would say, hey, break it down for me. And it's step by steps, right? So that's not as important anymore as the fact that it's complete, that it is, all the info's there. And so we define that as you are able to replicate the system.
All right. And when thinking about like where openness then is where the system's implementation is made open, can you think of any examples of AI systems that you would call open in such a way?
There's only one I know of. In fact, there's an organization that has set itself up to certify these systems, and I'll have to find the name for you later, but it's not a very well known, and the AI, I can't remember the name of it either right now, and because I only just found out about this last week, so I haven't had a chance to even get into it yet. That's a bit new, but that's how new it is. Like, there are just not that many that would conform to an open source AI definition. Even and you hear Meta with their Llama models, which are super useful. You can download them and you can use them, but they are not open source. They'll say they're open source, but they're not. They don't conform to all of those criteria that are in the definition.
All right, that's my questions. Back to you, Lee.
Okay.
Thanks, Vid, and thanks, Martin. So I think that you have mentioned a few risks that could associate with, the use of open AI, but I want to somehow ask you for some more elaboration about the risks of, of the development and the deployment of open AI. If everyone can access to the open AI model, they could do whatever with it. They could, replicate it. Is there any risk associated with that?
There is, and of course, the internet was the same. At the early internet, everyone was super worried that you could get bomb recipes and become a terrorist. In fact, in 1996, I was involved here in Australia with our West Australian government proposing to introduce a censorship bill to start stopping people accessing part of the internet. And of course, many countries do have censorship of the internet still, China being a famous example, many Middle Eastern countries. People, well, two things. One is there aren't people making bombs all over the place, even though they have access to the data because they're not terrorists. And secondly, even if you block data, people will get it anyway. They will find ways to get it. So I think introducing censorship of AI, which is what we're talking about, like blocking access to certain people, to certain models or certain capabilities, it's destined to fail. I don't think it's possible, whatever you try and do. In fact, our Australian government right now is trying to impose a 16, you have to be 16 to access social media. Do you think it's going to stop any 15-year-old? Absolutely not, right? So it's a waste. It's almost a waste of time to even think about it, and I don't see it as such a big problem. What I think is a much bigger problem is a gigantic super intelligence that someone like Elon Musk runs, and Twitter turns into an X app, right? He wants to have an X app where he's copying the WeChat model in China, where this does everything, right? The everything app. He keeps talking about this everything app. You do all your payments through it. You run your life through this app, right? So Elon Musk wants to build that. He also wants to build this XAI thing. He's getting hundreds and millions of billions of investment into this thing, which will be a big part of that. It'll be sitting there. And what is it trained on? Twitter data, right? All that toxic discussion and things happening on Twitter. So I don't know. That is a much bigger danger, that there is some super intelligence. Because remember, AI is on an exponential curve of power. What we're looking at now is down the bottom, right? These things will be smart. You will have an AI that could, well, first self-improve, and secondly, can do things in the real world. It could design a factory to produce some widgets and make contract negotiations and shipping and sell these things and sell them all over the world. Maybe selling X devices everywhere, like, or whatever. I'm not picking on Elon Musk, but he's a pretty prominent example right now because of the way he's got himself into government. So these are much bigger dangers, right? And these guys are now influencing government. The only places where we had a hope of policy even coming from are now being influenced by billionaires and people who have control over these big super intelligences that are coming. These are massive. I feel like we all need AI to even the playing field somewhat, right? And I would like to see as much AI power in as many people's hands as possible. Otherwise it becomes too one-sided, and the inequity that we have now will only get more, right? One side has super intelligence, basically godlike beings that can do anything, and then the other side are just renting everything. Yeah, that's not a good scenario.
Thank you. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, and you look at the people who are proposing to limit AI, they're often the people who already are the AI leaders, because they want to put a moat around them, right? Gate behind them. That's why things need to be open. And the same, look, we've had the same discussions in open source for decades, right? Should the power of Linux be available to everybody? You know, what if they like hack in and cybersecurity and do all these things? Well, you know, what's the alternative is much worse.
I see. Oh, thank you. And I think this is the last question for today. That do you think, like, are there any steps that necessary to promote the openness in AI? What do you think? To promote
you're
the openness?
talk about it. We got to be talking about it. We have to be pointing out things we're seeing out there, publishing openly, living openness. So when you research something, put it out there. I used the metaphor, have been using the metaphor recently, that the internet is not a library. We used to think of it as a kind of library. The internet is now a student. We have to teach the internet, and we need to be talking and publishing and pushing things out there into the internet and the AIs and data, because all this data all ends up being in a big washing machine together. Like, we have to be putting the good stuff out there, right? What are the good things that that we want to see? Well, let's explain them, let's research them, let's find the data for them, let's prove them, let's get that stuff out there, because it's a counterbalance to this commercial narrative of, oh, we know best and you just keep paying us, and you know, yeah, so what if your house is out of reach and you can't afford a place to live? That's not our problem. Yeah, so that's the one thing. To promote open, you have to be open. There's your soundbite.
That makes sense. Thanks, Martin. So thanks for sharing your insights today. And I think, Vid, do you have any question for Martin? Or
Maybe just one clarification, something that I'm not fully sure about. As we talk about AI being open or not, do you see it as a binary, or can something be partially open in some ways and not in others?
Oh yeah, it's a door. Yeah, it's just like a door. It can be a little bit open or a lot open. I'm always pushing for maximum open, because well, if you and your partner are arguing about the breeze through the house and how open that door should be, and it's warm and you want a cool breeze, you push for as open as possible. Maybe your partner might go, oh, we'll close it a bit, it's too much. So you've got to push as far as you can to get it over there, to pull it in that direction. If you're only talking about and fighting for a small level of openness, then you will probably get half of what you're asking for. So yeah, that's the thing with advocacy.
All right. And so as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add or discuss that we haven't asked about use or future of open AI in education?
So I think there is, and these have been very good questions, and it's been a great discussion. As I said at OE Global, I think the key thing is for everyone who's interested in openness or open AI or any of these things to work together more. Let's look for bigger projects we can contribute to. And I had this one idea of an OER data set that we could all be contributing to. Imagine if we had a place we could register OER content, and the reason we're all pushing and registering our stuff in the central place is because it's all going to be wrapped up and pushed at the AI developers of all kinds to help fix bias problems. So more languages, more data that doesn't usually get onto the internet and is thus not part of the data set. That to think about those things, look around for people you can collaborate with, or maybe they're running projects and you could join, because if I know everyone's busy and everyone's resource strapped, but if we pool our resources, we have a lot, we have power, and we have energy to get more done. So OE Global is one organization, and there are others, but yeah, just see if you can contribute and join.
Sounds good. Let's keep the conversations going. Thanks very much for your insights today. Really appreciate it. And let's stay in touch.
Yep. Thanks both of you. Anytime.
Martin. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Yep.
Take
you
care.
too. Yeah. Thanks and best of luck. I'm looking forward to seeing the results as they keep coming out.
Yeah, we will send you the video. We'll be in touch.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.